Thank you. How is everyone? How many people, this is like your fifth or more CES? I just, okay, yeah, so it's me too. Man, I'm super happy to be here. Of course, it's CES, so I was already here. Pete was like, hey, can you come by? We're doing the first voice conference at CES, so I'm super excited about that. If this is the first time we're meeting, doesn't have to be the last. TheDaveDev.com is all my info. There's a podcast there. You can get my Twitter, LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to give you some background for voice. As Pete mentioned, I was part of the Kindle team. I did Fire TV. I've always loved tech gadgets. So I've always I did that both at Microsoft and Amazon. And gosh, it was 2014 when I first started looking at this Echo speaker thing before we released it. And I've just seen that grown. In fact, I remember sitting around a table and we had 10 of these Alexa skills. And now we're at over 100,000. And I'm happy to announce another number. We're at over 500,000 developers building for Alexa. And that one's a special one for me because I was a coder. I joined Amazon as a coder too. Now I just pretend that I can still code. But I remember saying, what is a voice developer? I mean, some of you may have this in your own company, right? In 2014, I'm like, what is a voice developer? Is it mobile? Because that's what a lot of us thought. Is it Java? Because that's the only API that was available for Alexa back then. Or is it RESTful services? And in fact, what I've learned over this short 5-6 years is that it's really the person that's going to create this experience is a human being. And so we're learning to talk again. And sometimes development teams asking them to go ahead and build for voice is like asking them to put together a PowerPoint, right? It's this entirely different side of the brain. And in fact, if you study neuroscience, you'll find there's different things, right? So for example, there's a certain amount of information that we can pull through our consciousness. It's called the Shannon limit. You can only put so much data through any kind of communications channel. And that's why as human beings, we do things like, hey, what's the net, right? What's the best out of 10? Or just tell me the top 3. We don't need specific pieces of data. And our entire tech industry has always been about that. Right? Through my career, I would go to companies, and I have the ability now to go and talk to major brands about their customers and how they want to talk to them. And I would go and I'd say, hey, you're talking to your existing customer. Why don't you go ahead and learn this entirely new API and platform, whether it's mobile or cloud, that we've created here in Silicon Valley. We want you to go learn it so you can talk to your customers again. Right? How many people went through that kind of loop? This is the first time that I can remember in my career where it's not changing that. In fact, it's opening up doors to talk to customers that you may not have been able to in mobile. My parents are just as excited about Alexa and voice as my kids. So what does that demographic mean? What does it mean when you can talk to your customers that aren't 18 to 34 every day in the moment where they are? You're not sending them an email survey 24 hours later because they called a phone line. And so that is just what I want you to think about today. If you're just starting to begin into the space, is how do you talk to your customers in the moment? This doesn't just apply to Amazon, it's this entire space. And that is what's truly got me excited. Here's just some other numbers that we've released. So I want to just share some of it. And it's near and dear to me because I remember it was one country, 10 skills, and I was trying to get the first developer. And some of those first developers were, Pete said, in 2015. So we are now at hundreds of millions of Alexa-enabled devices. Customers interact with Alexa billions of times each week. Alexa engagement has quadrupled over the last 2 years. And there's now over 100,000 smart home products from 9,500 unique brands. I remember CES 2015 walking around, and if I saw a Works with Alexa logo, I got all excited and I took a picture and tweeted it out. And now you just see that. And the way that I like to explain this is think of voice as the new HTML. It's not the channel itself. What it is a way for everyone to communicate with all the things in your life, whether that's your car, a piece of technology, or each other. Just the way the web brought us together, and we could communicate, voice is going to do that, and nothing is simpler. So one of the things that we've seen at Amazon, you may have seen this if you've built Alexa skills too, is you can have daily touch points with customers when you're using voice. So this is certainly true for me. In the morning, I'm getting weather. I also ask for my flash briefing, which are very popular with customers, so you can get news. I get like tech news plus regular news. Maybe you want to listen to music at lunch. You come home, my kids are using and asking questions for homework, and they're also playing music. Or maybe you're setting timers while you're going ahead and cooking the evening meal. So these are daily, consistent touch points throughout the day for specific tasks that you can go ahead and integrate in, which is very different than mobile, right? What are some of the statistics I've seen? Like all of us probably touch our phones and are interacting with it like 45 times a day, right? And I think that's probably a low number. So this is very, very different. It's having a conversation in the moment. It's spontaneous. And in fact, nothing is faster. And so there are certain types of things you need to think about of what works in voice, because what works in voice doesn't always work in mobile. You know, as a developer, I started out, I was coding on Commodore like in the 80s, and we've had like 30 years of building UI interfaces, right? We've got ways to show information through tabs and collapse things down. So if you're creating the ability to search through a whole bunch of information with voice, that's going to not be the best experience, right? Because there's, again, the Shannon limit. Just give me the best one. Just what's the gist, right? What's on sale? So browsing, not that good. Let's say I want to look for running shoes. Searching, what are the best running shoes for less than $50? There you go. Or how about a transaction? Order those pair of running shoes that reorder those pair of running shoes that I ordered 6 months ago. Very fast, right? Whether it's on mobile, in the car, on your device, voice, nothing is faster. And so you'll see more of these. A lot of you may have done this, like ask the weather, will it rain today? It also changes over time. Think about this. If you've been doing tech for a while, every one of your customers today has the latest version of the OS and the most updated app when it comes to having a conversation. We've never had that, right? So it has the deployability and management of the web, but the discoverability and ease of use of mobile. And so things change over time. Alexa uses deep learning. And so if I said, and my kids were playing this for a while, if I said something like, what song goes like Old Town Road, that meant nothing 5 years ago. But that means entirely something different today, and what happens to be a top song. That happens automatically when you're talking with your customers. So when they have a question, it's not you that has to update how your mobile app works. And in fact, everybody here know like Myers-Briggs personality types or the 5 core personality traits? So how about having an experience where you can have ambiguity for someone that is fine with that, but then afterwards shoot them an email for somebody who needs a list of all the data, right? It's no longer one size fits all. So it's task completion, transactional entities, and then understanding. What if I say something like, how am I doing? Which, by the way, is something that happened when Capital One released their skill. People actually asked this question. When we launched Alexa, people would say things like, Alexa, I love you. How do you respond to that? Or how do you respond to, Alexa, I'm feeling depressed? And there are actually answers for that now. So it's human beings interacting and having real conversations with technology in ways that we haven't before. And so this is context across turns. If we have been talking, like Pete mentioned, we've known each other for a decade, I'm not going to ask Pete, how old his kids are or where he lives. You're building upon experiences over time. So you have the ability to start small and then increase those experiences. It's funny, with the Dunkin' Donuts in the back, and I grew up in Jersey, so I was always hitting Dunkin'. I'll just give you some examples of this. Like Dunkin' Donuts, 50% of customers who go and use the Alexa skill complete an order. And in fact, a third of customers come back and complete multiple orders. And I do this for Domino's too. I order easy order. So it's just this context across turns, just naturally learning. It's multimodal. So if I'm doing something in the car, I could say, Alexa, order a pizza, and it'll be there when I get home, right? Or I could say, turn the AC down while I'm in the car. And it evolves across all of these different contexts. It's very personal. So we have something called Alexa personalization, where Alexa just knows my voice. So when I ask for top hits, or I am using your skill and I'm trying to get something on sale, It knows it's Dave and that it's not my kids. So you have that ability. And then gender and age. My dad, he's been having some medical issues. He's older, and I was with him at the doctor's office, and the doctor came in. The doctor's older than me, and he turned to me and said, "He kind of looks young for a doctor." And I'm like, "Dad, he's in his 50s. But it's gender and age. What do you feel comfortable with? Do you want to talk with someone who is older, someone who's younger? And in fact, with Alexa, you can say, speak slower, speak faster, right? So that, again, it's very, very personal. It gives us that connection in ways that we haven't had before. There was a breakthrough, some of you may not know this, right around 2016, where we were looking at neural networks and the ability to generate speech. And the way that speech works is there's a prosody and a speed and a tone. And the way that we've done it in the past is we've just recorded neutral speech, and as human beings, we were forgiving. We said, that's good enough. It's not too excited, it's not too sad, it's not happy, it's just good enough, it's neutral. Well, now through Neural TTS, and you'll see this not just across Alexa, but the whole industry, voices are sounding closer to being very, very human. Now, you can still do through the math, you can still do and detect that that's been a generated voice. But what it does is it gives us more personalization and connection. In fact, Samuel Jackson is now the voice of Alexa. So if you say, Alexa, talk to Sam, or Alexa, ask Sam for the weather, you will hear, and it blew my kids away when he was talking about the weather in our hometown and actually said it, and I was like, yeah, I know Sam Jackson, But just think about that in the future. If you have a brand, why not create a persona and have that voice? And in fact, we have a technology through AWS called Poly, which gives you numerous amounts of voices across all different accents that you can just integrate and have conversations with your customer. And so you're seeing more and more of this innovation in Alexa to help customers multilingual, so the ability to switch between English and Spanish on the fly, Hindi and English too. Customer tone, so it's very different if I say, Alexa, stop, or I go, Alexa, shut up, right? Being able to detect that tone. And then hunches, it's like, Dave, I noticed every morning you're asking me for directions to work and weather. Why don't I just create a routine? And then the routine can also control smart home, so we'll go make some coffee. Just doing that over time becomes very, very personable. It's knowing you. Or Alexa, what did you hear? You can do this now. Or why did you do that, right? So if I go ahead and play a song and it's a different song, the ability to just understand. And I love this one. If you have an Alexa device with a camera, you can say, Alexa, identify this. Somebody like my mom who is having lower vision, the ability to just hold up her vitamins and say, identify this. It can say, that's actually the right bottle. And so it's moving to conversations versus these interactions, right? You think about mobile, we've been doing simple instructions, simple turns. Multi-turn conversations have happened now with voice and Alexa, and you see other kind of assistants. But what we need to be as human beings is in this ambiguous multi-session reasoning, right? That's where we all live. And how do we get AI to that point? And we've been focusing on that at Amazon. You'll see we've released things like Alexa Connections, which gives the ability for one skill to call out to another skill. So for example, if I'm using all recipes and I want to print it, I'll just print to my printer, right? The ability to kind of integrate. And so let's think about customers' latent goals. As a human being, if we all want to go out later and have a night out, although it's a night out in Vegas, so that could be anything, right? But if we want to have a night out, what does that mean? Now, I say as a human being, night out. Let's say if I want to go see a movie. So in the way that this works now is we would have the ability to say, I want a night out. You do an invocation and you get back some data. What we're doing through deep learning and now a cross-skill action predictor is that it will figure out what you need. So if you are a company that does car sharing, or you're a company that books movie tickets, you're not just getting called directly from your customers through the mobile app, but you're getting called by an AI who now sees the interactions that when people say they want to go out at night, they want to book a movie ticket. And we think over time, we're just using this as an example, but we think over time, customers are going to come up with all sorts of scenarios to be able to handle this. And we're calling this Alexa Conversations. So it's applying AI and taking all of those different 100,000 plus skills that you see and interacting so that we can just have a conversation as a human being. And so I want you to walk away here as you're going across the CES floor and you're having conversations this week. If you're going and you want to build an experience for your customers in the future, Don't limit that customer to the person on the right. In a world of voice that's personal and inclusive, your biggest customer may be the person on the left. You can have conversations whenever, however, for everyone. Meet your customer in the moment. And the conversation, it never has to end. Thank you. I'm going to bring up Mark from XMOS. XMOS is doing some pretty cool stuff at CES. Has anybody heard of XMOS or is familiar with their offerings? Okay, so this will be great for you to kind of explain your background and what you guys are doing at CES and what you see with voice.
Sure. So we are actually a semiconductor company originally. We spun out of the University of Bristol back in 2005, 2006. And our original thesis for building the company was to build technology that consumer electronics designers could use to create something quite special. Our observation was that most of the products that were available to consumer electronics designers were reference designs. They had to just recreate what the semiconductor company envisioned as the right product, and consequently they were just building the same products as their competitors, and they were competing on cost. So we spun out a semiconductor company to solve that problem on behalf of the embedded world. Quite rapidly, we became a vendor of audio solutions. So Apple stopped putting FireWire into their MacBooks, and the Apple ecosystem didn't have a solution. So we used our own technology to create an audio solution for that. And after 2 or 3 years, we were renowned as one of the highest quality audio vendors in the semiconductor world. Along that route, we developed our architecture, our underlying platform, added a lot of DSP capability. And in 2016, we actually had a couple of design-ins in the Sony Xperia Agent. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a sort of a companionship robot. The original Baidu DuerOS robot had XMOS technology inside it. And this was just using our original audio technology, nothing specific about voice. And eventually we observed that happening, and then Alexa was launched. And you may not remember this, but you were the first person I contacted when Alexa was launched.
Oh, my apologies.
I found your name and I contacted you, and you very me in the right direction. And our relationship with Amazon, yeah, well done. Our relationship with Amazon actually started in January 2016.
Yeah. And just some background for the audience. How many people here have an embedded product or some type of consumer electronic that you actually built? Okay. And so, well, we see some hands in back, some up here. What we saw so it was June 2015. Not only did we launch this Alexa Skills API, but we also launched something called the Alexa Voice Service. So the idea was, Alexa is in these products that Amazon builds that we sell to customers called Echo. But customers are going to want Alexa anywhere, right? It could be in a speaker, and there's been stuff at CES you've probably seen, like refrigerators, right? All over the place. And we weren't going to build that. We needed to make that available for free. And so we called that the Alexa Voice Service. And the idea being that if you're creating a consumer electronic piece and we're moving into this voice-driven world, then you're going to have a disadvantage when you're trying to sell something because people are going to talk to it. How many people are in their hotel trying to talk to an assistant, whether it's an Alexa or not, right? Something goes up. The way that our brains work is we actually build these neural pathways. So the expectation, just like if we have a piece of glass in front of us now on a technology, we expect to touch it. We expect to be able to talk to the technology in our lives. And what was, right away, what we saw from customers was, okay, well, how do I build something, one, that doesn't increase the cost of my product tenfold, right. Two, is actually reliable and easy to use for my customers so they can just talk. And so these kits started, and you all had one of those first kind where you could buy this embedded piece of electronics and put it in an existing
That's
product.
Right. So if you go to our website right now, what you'll see is a number of different voice solutions. And essentially, our goal in life is, in an arbitrarily noisy environment, is to make the voice sound like you've got a microphone right here. What we're doing, so that's the kind of the here and now, and we get a tremendous amount of support from Amazon. And actually, one of the things that the AVS team do, which obviously we benefit from, albeit indirectly, is to smooth the path in all of the other areas that need doing. Adding a voice interface to a category that previously didn't have a voice interface is non-trivial. There's a lot of thought that needs to go into it. You sort of need to step back and reconsider, in some cases, how the technology or how the user experience is managed. And Amazon have really blazed a trail through that. And we're focused now on smart TV set-top boxes, similar categories to the ones that where those user experiences have been properly thought through. And that really helps us to get to market quickly and sell chips, which is what we need to do to build a successful business. Nowadays, we're looking a little bit more at multimodal. It's interesting to see what you were saying about conversation, because one of the things that really interests me is what we need to do as a chip company that has to place long-term bets. What we need to do from a sensor processing perspective to identify conversations and to potentially identify opportunities to push information asynchronously into a space. So a voice-based push notification, if you like. So that whole conversational awareness thing, I think, is a fascinating area.
Yeah, and when it comes to voice, like the modality creates entirely different scenarios. So let me think. Like in the home, right? The first thing I would hear from, and how many people here have an Echo? All right, how many people here have had an Echo for more than 2 years? Wow. How many people more than 4 years? Wow. Okay. So one of the very first things, I mean, this is going all the way back, I would hear from customers is, I don't know what I said, but it did it. I forgot how I asked for weather. Like you could say, what's the weather outside? Is it going to rain? Is it going to snow? You know, tell me. And that's the way we are as human beings. And you can try and define that as a persona too, but the truth is, there's days that Dave is angry, there's days that Dave's depressed, and the way that I talk actually changes, right? Mm-hmm. And so you think the home, and that what was remarkable for people, the magic was that Alexa heard them from across the room, right? And then how many people started getting multiple devices, and then you would say Alexa, and then they would all answer? Right? And so suddenly we had this multi-device household. And that's a scenario you don't even think of in the beginning. And so we put technology in there called ESP, Echospatial Perception. We're all sci-fi geeks. And it's basically the ability to figure out which signal is strongest, right? Which is probably something you've run into. But think about the car. I don't know about you, but my kids, even with headphones, are super loud. What about music playing? What about cars around you? And what about rain? And the wiper blades. And so even with Echo Auto that we have, you can see the little holes. We have the same kind of beam microphone technology. Mm-hmm. And so that is, as you walk across modalities, what does it mean to have voice interaction in a hospital, in a closed home, in an automobile, or in an airplane, right? And that's definitely something where you guys have been looking into.
I think that's one of the, as is mentioned, our primary focus is on consumer, but one of the areas that we get pulled into is medical technology. And what's interesting now is the sort of crossover products that we're seeing where you're getting domestic health monitoring. So you're looking for, for example, for elderly relatives who might have fallen over, and you're trying to use multimodal sensors to fall detect, essentially. Yep. So you're listening to noises, and they're not voices, or they might be, but they might not be voices. And you're listening, and you're looking for indications that somebody's in distress and potentially has fallen over. And those crossover cases, I think, are really very interesting, and particularly because I think there's some alternative business models that are available for those kinds of products.
Oh yeah, I had, this is probably, it was one of my backgrounds on Twitter for a while. It was when we had like 20,000 skills. So I think it was 2016 or 20, like right before I went on stage, I got this email from someone that said, Alexa saved my dad's life. And he was 93, and he collapsed, and he said, Alexa, help. And he had, it saved his life. And they sent me pictures of him blowing out his 93rd birthday candles in cake. And I was like, wow, like there's something here, right? And there are services that do that on Alexa today, where that morning routine I talked about, right? And my parents are older. My dad, he's turning 80 next month. I can do things like I'm making my coffee and I'm asking how my commute is, and I'm asking for current news, but I can say, Alexa, how's dad? Alexa, how has Dad been moving? Right? Because that is actually an area of concern. Now, I'm not opening a mobile app. I'm not doing anything different. I'm hanging out with the family, but I also have the ability to just go and ask. And by the way, I've seen that work across enterprises too. So we have this thing called Alexa for Business, which can integrate with Active Directory or any of the other stuff out there. And you can set up personalities. So I could say, Alexa, how is the sales forecast for Mid-Atlantic District? Which some of you may have some of those things while you're making coffee, right? And so it's like what you say. Have you seen, is there anything like super interesting that you've come across that you didn't think about as you were building this and you're like, I've been building these devices for so long, but wow, voice really took and pivoted it in this kind of direction that I never thought I'd be working. I know for me, there are areas, I actually wound up in the Journal of Medicine talking to surgeons at Johns Hopkins, right? Who were thinking about voice in the surgery and things like that, right? Have you had anything interesting like that?
So we've had a wide variety of things. One of the characteristics of the opportunities that we see in the last 12 months is the fragmentation, the diversity of things that are having voice interfaces put in them. I mean, the Shadecraft was a great example. That was one of the designs we were in 2 or 3 years ago. It's a voice-enabled sunshade.
Okay.
It's a very, very high-end, designed for high-end hotels.
Yeah.
And if you're lying in your sun lounger, very close to my own heart, and you want your next gin and tonic, it's Alexa, can you bring me a gin and tonic, or can you ask somebody to bring me a gin and tonic? So I don't think that function appears yet. So that's I guess a trivial example, but I think things like we're in a GE cooker hood that allows, basically coaches you through a cooking experience, and that's an area where your hands are busy, your eyes are typically busy, and voice really works in that case.
Right.
And so those are the things that we get excited about, because of course voice is going to be everywhere at some point. As you say, it'll be like your 3-year-old will expect a voice interface. That's going to happen at some point in the future, but in order to really excite people and get people motivated about voice as a primary user interface, first of all, we've got to start with the things that deliver real utility. So my hands are dirty, I'm worried about germs, I'm not looking towards the device, or whatever it might be. Voice makes absolute sense in those cases, and that's where not only do we see the design activity, but we also see the volume, the sell-through.
And so you're launching a product with an Alexa in it. Where can people find more info, and what is the kind of scenario for that?
So we have, I mean, you can obviously come straight to the Exmos website, but we're also a part of your own AVS website. And I think one of the services that you provide is to help people who really don't know where to start. Right. So they can phone call, email Amazon, and just ask for guidance on which solution best fits that use case. We've got, I think, still the most qualified solutions in the Amazon AVS ecosystem. So hopefully you'll end up at Exmos, but there are alternatives, obviously, and that's the beginning of a journey, really, where the audio front end is part of that journey. But as I was saying, there's a lot of user interface considerations that need to take place to build a really successful product. And we'll be, as I say, there's plenty of work to be done on the front end. There's increasingly more types of sensors, increasingly more near sensor processing that needs to be done nowadays. A lot of that is using AI techniques to determine metadata, like somebody's fallen over.
Right.
So we're pretty busy in that space, but we need our customers to be successful in every area to get sell through, to get a profitable situation for the ecosystem.
Excellent. And is there a area that people can check out here at CES for the audience?
We're actually in the Amazon area.
In the smart home, yeah. So that is in Venetian, level 2. Does anybody here go to AWS reInvent? Okay. How many people have deja vu, like walking around this? Yeah, exactly. I'm on autopilot so it's basically like you're at reInvent. And so in the Venetian, it's those main rooms on the right. You can walk in. Lamborghini there now, so if you want the chance to sit in a Lamborghini, so when we announced that, I'm like, I'm not going to go tweet out like Alexa in Lamborghini, right? Like I drive an Accord, but it's cool that it's there, right? Across all different autos. So you'll see an automobile, you'll see Alexa in auto, you'll see stuff that Exmos is doing, and it's really about having voice anywhere that you all want. And I know you mentioned kids, right? And so my kids are older, 15 and 12. So they've like grown up in the touch generation, I call it, like the glass. They want to touch everything. But I do hear from parents all the time where there's like kids 5 and under that it's just talking to things, right? And some of you have probably, the running joke when my kids was little was they were tapping magazines, right, to go ahead and turn it. And I think now we're moving into that voice first world where there's going to be an expectation for that generation. So having partners like you building hardware that we can have a way for everybody to build a consumer device that you can talk to.
Very cool.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent job. Excellent.